Hello, I'm Kevin Madsen. I drive in commercials, manufacturer testing, and of course, racing. Some of the race cars I've recently driven in include the McLaren 720S GT3 Evo with Inception Racing, the Honda Civic Type R TC with Hippogriff Racing, and the super awesome Ligier prototypes with Group Virage over in Europe. Now my friends at CXC Simulations have me out here today because one of my passions and something that keeps me really busy is working with drivers to improve their performance. That's drivers just like you. One of the series that I've done that a lot in over the past few years is Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Today I'm in the CXC Simulations Motion Pro 2 simulator. There's a couple of aspects that separate this from a lot of the other simulators on the market. One, it's turnkey. It's all high-end components, but you get on and you're able to very quickly get up to speed. Two, really has to do with the motion. I like how immediate it is. There's no delay, so I can spend more time on this without getting sick like some other simulators on the market. And then probably the most important part for anyone who's busy, the customer service aspect. A lot of these simulators, you're messing with a lot of key functions in the background. Updates can cause some problems. You hit a customer service button and you're all set with this CXC simulation. Now that we're in this simulator, the CXC Motion Pro 2 Sim, let's get the controls where we need them to perform at our best. They make it easy for us because we have these dials on the right side where we can slide the entire pedal and wheel setup nice and close to us. I'm looking for, ideally, my hands and shoulders to be about level, and I want a good bend in the arm. I want to be able to crank this wheel both directions without really having anything that I'm hitting. I've got long arms, so it gets a little bit close to the seat. I could make adjustments with the pads if I needed to, but this actually feels pretty good. Most importantly though, the brake pedal, I want to make sure I've got really good leverage on that in the knee. Now let's go ahead and put on our harnesses, not just for safety, of course, in the sim, but here it's actually going to provide some haptic feedback. It's going to kind of trick our brains into thinking that we are going into a braking zone and that sort of thing. What I recommend you to do is put on your harnesses the same way you would when you're in the race car. So whatever you end up doing on the sim, make sure it's the same as what you do in the race car. Now that we're comfortable inside the car, we're going to go ahead and make some adjustments that are specific to the sim. The first one we're going to want to go ahead and adjust is motion. So the amount of motion is easily selectable just by dialing up, almost like any other dial in a race car, like traction control. Brake pressure, now the higher the number on this brake pressure dial means the more force you're going to need to put in that pedal. And finally, we've got this vibration dial on the bottom right. And this one is connected to 3 different butt kickers throughout the chassis. It's going to provide some more of that feedback to kind of trick your brain, really make you think that you're inside the car. And this, actually, I like having quite a bit of it. It makes the car, to me, feel a little bit more realistic. Now, I'm already set with what I think is the proper wheel on this CXC Sim, and it's a quick release, very easy to get on and off, and they have all sorts of different style wheels. In this case, I've got a Formula style wheel, which is going to work quite well for the Super Trofeo. In racing, data is key, and CXC makes it easy with the VBox integration here. So you just hit this VB Sim button. That's going to automatically upload your data. For instance, you're working with someone like me or any other coach out there, you're able to get that data sent over automatically. If you're working with someone else, whether it's a coach or some other friends to kind of get a baseline, you want to make sure that you're all running the same settings. And you can take the defaults that you have through iRacing, or you can make adjustments to kind of match the conditions that you think you're going to have when you get to that track. You can generate weather, and that's going to change it throughout the session randomly. Temperature may be a little bit cooler most of the year, so you're adjusting that. Winds are going to vary. Time of day, this is something that you can set to be fairly accurate to what your qualifying or race session will be. The interesting part when you make these changes is that you may notice when you're coming out of a certain corner, there's the capability for sun to be right in your eyes. So it's one of those things that when you make those adjustments, you might learn something before you actually get to the track. Now we'll get in and we're going to go ahead and make some adjustments to the force feedback. This can be personal preference. It also can vary on the car. All that is adjustable here very easily with this slider. We're going to keep it right around 16 Newton meters, which is ideal for this direct drive wheel. So for today, we're going to use iRacing. The challenge with iRacing, though, is that there is no Lamborghini Super Trofeo in it. But let's try to find a setup with the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo that is going to be as close to what the Super Trofeo should feel like. I'm going to lower the traction control settings just because the Super Trofeo has so much more power, 500 horsepower in the GT3 versus 620 or so in the Super Trofeo. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit more crazy as far as the rear end's concerned when I go to power. ABS is different in those two cars, so I'll make some slight adjustments as far as like how that's concerned. And we've got the endurance lights, turned off. We're not gonna have those in the Super Trofeo car. It's more of a sprint car. Diff preload, I'm gonna make some adjustments here. And there's a couple other things that I've gone through and changed. Car's a little bit softer, the ride height's different. So this setup will actually provide it. You can download it as well. And once again, it's not gonna make you any faster, but it should give you some of the differences that are apparent in the Super Trofeo. Now let's make sure that our view inside the car is accurate. Very easy on the CXC Sim. By clicking the view button, we get in, we have field of view, tilt, height, everything right here on the dash, easily adjustable. Don't have to mess with the keyboard for this. You can go in or out with that field of view. I actually like it right about where it's at. The tilt, I'm a taller guy, so I've got to make sure that this adjustment is lined up correctly with my field of view as it would be in the car. And height is one of those ways. For me, I actually pull the pads out in a lot of cars, or I don't run much of an insert, so I sit pretty low. It allows me to see a little bit better view around the track out the right side of the car. Today I'm here to talk you through what will be round 2 of the Super Trofeo series at Watkins Glen International. Watkins Glen is an epic track in the sense that it's hosted Formula 1, NASCAR, and then of course IMSA and a number of other different series. You could even drive there at a track day. So the neat part about it, in addition to being 3.4 miles, is it's got a ton of elevation change. It also has these, what I call the blue monsters all the way around the track, walls super close. It really feels like a roller coaster. It's a very thrilling track to be at. So I'll talk you through some of the key aspects to help you out in this beast of a car today. So we're inside the Lamborghini Huracan GT3. Again, not exactly the Super Trofeo, but the one thing we want to take away from this and the setup that we have for it is that you're trying to make straightaways wherever you can. You're trying to utilize all 620 horsepower of the Super Trofeo when you're out there on track. Now we're in pit lane. Let's go ahead and get started, get it up into gear. Everything we do when we're on the sim, we should practice like we're going to race. So the pit limiter, we're going to release it at the right point. We're also going to think about every little aspect exiting the pit. So looking across as we come over to the fast lane, pit limiter off. And then coming around, you can see right off the bat, this is kind of a wild pit exit. You're coming through here and you're trying to push and you might be on cold tires. The important part is when you go ahead and enter the track that you don't cross this blend line. We don't want any penalties. So we're going to stay to the right as much as we can, not cross the blend line. In fact, once we cross this blue line here, we're all set. Now we're going to look to the left, see if we're clear, and get ourselves set up for the next corner. If you were to come out right like this for turn 2 initially, say the track was clear, now you're getting a little bit better view of how aggressive the camber is. Massive uphill section. And you're going to be so quick in the Super Trofeo through this section. It's really going to fly by. As we're coming through, we're just getting as close as we can to the curb. We don't want to get on it because there is a change in the camber if we were to do so. We're nice and close, just putting our right side wheel against the paint as we come up the hill. And yes, in real life, it is this crazy. Just the incline is just wild. Smooth, slow hands at the end of the curb to start bringing you across for turn 3. Now, if this was our out lap, I'd be thinking about warming up my tires. The best way to do that's with the brakes. So when I get to the straightaway coming up after turn 4, I'd be warming up the car. But for now, I'm just trying to place the car exactly where it should be to kind of give you an idea of how our hot lap should be. Coming across to what I kind of call the tunnel, where you get these giant fences over the top. You're going to be about center track, smoothly coming back across to the right. And what I want you to keep in mind is that as you go left to right on the track, 1, you should be checking your mirrors, or at least have a wide field of view so you can keep in mind who's behind you. 2, there's also a bit of a concave nature to the track. So as you come across left to right, the car is going to react to that camber in different ways. So you want to keep that in mind, be nice and smooth and ready to catch the car, particularly on cold tires. So I'll pick up the pace a little bit here, long straightaway, and we're heading up, still uphill. If you walk this track, it is a massive walk at 3.4 miles. But if you walk the track, you'll notice, wow, this is actually still an uphill section, which allows you to brake later than you think. I think in the Super Trofeo, we were braking right around the 350 mark or towards the end of the brake in the wall. In this GT3 car, because we're going slower, about 120 less horsepower, you're going to be able to brake a little bit later. So make those adjustments when you actually get to the real track. We're not going to be able to brake that late in reality. On these curbs, there's a number of different ways to take them, and a lot of it is car dependent. You're going to try to take the most curb in the first section, take some in the second and the third, and really in the Super Trofeo try to avoid the curb as much as you can in turn 4. You're trying to make these straightaways, and your next straightaway is going to be the shot out here into turn 5. So you really don't need too much curb on the right side to help you. Hustle it in, and you're going to come in wide. The carousel, this has got some significant banking. It's a really fun section. It adds to the thrill of Watkins Glen. It gives you this feeling that you are on a roller coaster. The setup of the car is going to dictate how wide you really need to be. But again, I want you to think about how we're trying to make all these straightaways around the track with the Super Trofeo, so you can let that car come out a little wider than you think here, so that we can pivot it when we come off that throttle. And there's not really going to be, it's crazy to say, not really going to be any brake you're going to use here in this car. Maybe a couple bar, like some light pressure, but not much brake at all. And then you're going to let the car roll. You're starting to go downhill. You're getting more camber. Man, it feels good. We're tucking the car into the right. And usually right around this corner worker stand, if not just after, I'm making sure I'm getting to full throttle. And I'm hustling the car out. And I'm trying to find those permanent reference points and always scanning my field of view through to the right. And we're going to come out. We're going to nip this curb if we didn't, and we left a little bit on the table. Staying flat on the gas as we come back over to the right side of the track. This is one of those sections, again, where it's helpful to walk the track afterwards. You notice some of these markings that you'll see on the right side. So you'll brake right around that. I think in the Super Trofeos before, in this car, we're going to brake right around it. It's a little bit later. And then in this corner, it's actually pretty accurate. It's really tough in these Lambos to see into the corner. You've got the A-pillar kind of blocking you. The big part about turn 6 that you've got to keep in mind is it's not all going to be brake and throttle. There's going to be, because we're going downhill, a section here where it's okay to let the car roll. Let it roll, let it tuck in, really get it to the left side, and then go to that full power application. We're trying to maximize our full throttle application and use all 620 horsepower. And when you go to it, you got to be able to stay with it. And that's how we can measure success. Is if we're having to breathe out or even do a momentary breathe, it's going to upset the car late in the corner. It's also going to hurt our speed all the way down this straight. And I want to prevent people from trying to dive in on me here at turn 7. And they call this whole section, by the way, the boot. We just went through the laces, and then this is the toe, and then we'll get to the heel because it looks like a giant boot from up top. But through here, you're trying to prevent anybody from getting the idea diving in on you. And that's one of the aspects of Watkins Glen is there's very few sections on this track because it's so high speed where you get like a typical sort of passing zone. So people are going to make their own, and we got to keep that in mind that any minute mistake we make, they may try to maximize. So let's keep that in mind through here. Maximize that full throttle, really hustle down. Now the car setup is going to dictate how early or late you can really turn in here. I like to try to come in late with an ideal setup on the car, let the car rotate, and you're going up this massive uphill. That was actually the lowest section of the entire track that we were just in on the entry, and now we're going to go up this massive incline. Now in the Trofeo car, again, our goal is to try to get to that full throttle application. It's going to be really tough through here. We're going to get this wiggle about 2/3 of the way through the corner, and then we're going to get to that full throttle application, and it's going to feel really stressful. It should, at least. We're going to come out and use every inch on the exit. There's that little bit of an extension of the asphalt, and I tell you what, if you're not using it, we're leaving a little bit of time on the clock there. So we've got to use every inch of that asphalt. Now you have finally a bit of a break. You've got an opportunity to relax that grip, check your mirrors, check your gauges if you need to, and make sure that we're all set going up there. And that's really important in a race mentally to kind of recheck where you're at as well. All right, how am I doing? Relax my grip. Let's keep going. Oh my God, I'm at Watkins Glen. I mean, it's pretty epic that you're out here. Beautiful area of the country and such an epic track. But it's time to brake. So we're getting into the braking zone hard as we come up here. In this car, it's probably going to be around the 150 or so. I don't find those braking zones to be exactly accurate compared to reality. I think they were slightly adjusted the last time I was there. So you can keep that in mind. And that's one thing when we use the sim, it's a tool, but it's also a tool to make us more adaptive. Be ready to adjust when you get there, and the grip level and so many other changes that could happen. So we use these as temporary references, we could call them. So hard on the brakes, and then we're trailing off. And you've got good camber on this section of the track as, again, we're heading into what they call the heel of the boot. But then it goes away on the exit. So a long corner, it's more than 90 degrees if you look at it from up top, which is what makes it really difficult. You've got a lot of runoff on the exit, but now you lose all this camber. You're going downhill and you're losing camber on the exit. So what does that mean? It means it's really tough on the exit. It means you're gonna wanna fly out wide. And you've got this curb and it actually jumps up a little bit. So if you get a chance to walk the track, you'll see that, man, it's more significant than it feels. You know, Lamborghini's done a good job with the dampers to hide it, but man, it's pretty significant. So you've got to be careful when you're going across, especially if you've got a lot of wheel input. And I've seen some folks through this sort of narrow section get into the barriers. That's not going to be us, but just keep that in mind. It is a bit of a risky section. This is where the discussion in the driver's meeting is going to be very important about how much track we can use, because there is an advantage to coming out wide and using more I believe last time we were out there, they said we could put the right side wheels up onto the curbing. There was another time I was there where it was right side wheels can't go past the line. Whatever they say in the driver's meeting, you got to stick to that. All right, so now we're going to hustle back across. Even coming back across this curbing is a little bit of a risk because you got to do it pretty quickly. And this is one of the more challenging corners, turn 9, uphill. You know, we're going to rejoin where the NASCAR course, their kind of shortcut course is. And through here is a couple different ways you could take it. But again, I'm going to think super Trofeo. I've got to get the wheel straight. I've got to make these straightaways. I've got to be able to use all 620 horsepower. Tough to use 620 horsepower when I got a lot of wheel input, right? So let me get into this corner, get the car pivoted, and make the last part a straightaway. And then I know no one else is going to try to get in on me. The challenge is you don't want someone diving in on you early here either, right? And kind of taking your apex away from you. So we'll try to find sort of a happy medium. We might take something different in qualifying through here than we would during the race to prevent someone from taking out. Kind of a late turn it back into the left side. And this is one of the few corners in the Trofeo car where you are going to have to smoothly breathe into that throttle, right? We can't lean on traction control as much here because you're cresting over this hill. So a lot of times in the data where I'm trying to get folks to really kind of get to full throttle application as soon as possible around the track, here I understand you've got to be a little bit more patient. So you're rolling into that throttle and you're still going to be working that car all the way out to the right side of the track. And look at how close we're getting to this barrier. I mean, it's insane. This track is just so thrilling. Now we're hustling out up to turn 10. Believe it or not, on a really good lap, say new tires, low fuel load, quali, not using any brake through here. Absolutely wild. And honestly, if you can, you would try to stay in some throttle. So you do just a breathe to get the front nose of the car to tuck in turn 10, down to that curb, and then back in that throttle sooner than you think. You've got good camber to help you. This is a really important section, and 1 mile an hour through here is going to be amplified even through turn 11, the final corner, and then down to turn 1, which is a really important passing zone. So as we come through this section of the track, smooth hands in, off the throttle, back into that throttle sooner than you think. And if we're not out to this curbing, man, we've left something on the table. Now, how much curbing can we use? They'll talk about that in the driver's meeting. But generally, you don't want to be going too far because you still need to keep in mind this final corner. Hustling back over to the left, and there's one thing you're probably already noticing or you've already seen on videos, and that is the pit entry here at Watkins Glen is crazy. It's right on the actual driving line. So when we go through here, we've already indicated by coming left that we're not entering the pit. If someone's entering the pit, particularly in practice or qualifying, really important that you stay to the right and take the beginning of the blend line. It tells anybody behind you, hey, I'm actually going in the pit, watch out, my corner speed's gonna be low. Bottom line is be ready for people to slow at this apex and doing something silly as they pop into the pit. For us, we're not gonna do that here on this lap. We're gonna go ahead and take a lap, but we're bringing it in and we gotta get all the way down to this curb. We can't really see our exit coming out, but if we're not using every inch as we come all the way out of this corner, we're leaving something on the table. Let's brush a little bit of paint on that barrier almost. That's how close we're getting. Absolutely wild. What a thrilling place in here in upstate New York. Just fun for the whole family, great viewing points, and for us as drivers, man, we're gonna have some fun. All right, so we're heading down the front straight here at Watkins Glen, and I'm gonna talk you through this lap. Mostly like a lead follow lap. We're not going to go too crazy fast. Find our braking marker for turn 1, turning in, trailing out of the brakes, letting the car roll, hustle out, all the way out to this curbing. Get one wheel up on it. In the driver's meeting, they'll tell you if you're allowed to go further across. Tucking it down in turn 2, holding it right down by the paint, and then smooth, gentle hands at the end of that curbing on the right to cross to the left. Center track as we come through to convergences of that fence, and now flat all the way back down the backstretch. We're still going uphill. We can brake later than we think. Use that to kind of help you brake late through here. And we'll find that braking marker. It's later here in this GT3 car. We'll come across this first curve massively as much as we can, the second, and really set up a straight line as much as we can over the third. Now into turn 5, not really going to use much brake, if any at all. Get the car tucked down by this corner worker stand and full throttle. Let's go, all the way out. Back to the right, find your braking marker nice and late. Now we are at the laces of the boot. We'll tuck it in. When we go to power, I want it to be full throttle. Let's go all the way out, hustle it out. Back to the left side of the track, hard braking, and then a quick trail out of the brakes because this is a massive hill. We want the front end of the car to stay gripped up We need to keep our momentum all the way up the hill. Alrighty, coming up to turn 8, passing zone here, hard onto the brakes, trailing off the brake, into the apex, hustling all the way out to the left side of the track, using that curb, quickly back to the right. Man, we're staying busy here at Watkins Glen. And then through here, progressive on that throttle application, because the car's gonna get a little bit loose, all the way out to the right. Turn 10, deep breath, man. It's a quick one. Off that throttle, back into it as soon as you can. Curb on the right, hustle back left for turn 11, hard brake. And then let's get back to power as soon as we can. Scrape that mirror on the left side. Get as close as you can. Some final thoughts on Watkins Glen. Man, I enjoyed using the CXE sim, of course, and if you're using one back home, I'm sure you will too. This track, I mean, I've had a lot of success over the years with various drivers here, probably more than others. And why is that? You know, I don't live close to the track. I mean, I'm West Coast based, but I think a lot of it has to do with the practice that we've put in various series, whether it was touring cars or Super Trofeo or GT3. This is a track that really rewards those that spend some more time to learn the nuances, the camber, the curbing. So really spend some time on the sim and you'll see that there's little things here and there that you'll take away from it. Now, this Urcon GT3, it's not the Super Trofeo, you know that. So we'll go on, but I do want you to drive it. If you're driving in Super Trofeo, I want you to drive this course in such a way like it is the Super Trofeo car, and that's a bit of the challenge. But you saw it on my lap. I wasn't at the limit of this car necessarily, but I was driving it in a certain way where I'm keeping in the back of my mind, I've got to maximize my throttle applications, I've got to make straightaways, I've got to use the strengths that the Super Trofeo has, you know, less aero, more high speed, and that sort of thing. Overall, I think the last thing I'd say about Watkins Glen is enjoy your time out there. Bring your family if you can. It's a beautiful area of upstate New York. Wine tasting, you know, the ladies will love that. The whole family has stuff to do up there, and the fans are absolutely epic. So I wish you the best of luck out there on track, and practice like you race.